And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Wednesday, December 14th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com, and here are some of the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. High school basketball players from predominantly Native American schools are descending on South Dakota's Black Hills for today's tip-off of the Lakota Nation Invitational basketball tournament. The 35th annual tournament, which draws 16 girls and 16 boys teams, is part of a larger cultural event that draws thousands of Native Americans to Rapid City, South Dakota for an educational summit, a Lakota language bowl, a knowledge bowl, a business plan competition, an art show, and a powwow. Basketball legend Bill Russell, a Hall of Famer who played for the Boston Celtics, is expected to make an appearance on the night of December 16th, when games typically draw crowds of more than 7,000 people. Brewer created the small Lakota Nation Invitational tournament on the Pine Ridge Reservation in the 1970s with Native American teams out of Nebraska and Kansas. Tribal leaders were having trouble getting teams to play on the reservation after the American Indian Movement's 71-day occupation of Wounded Knee, and they needed an event to fill their basketball schedules. Within 3 years, it grew too big for Pine Ridge, and the Lakota Nation Invitational headed west just as the Rapid City Civic Center was opening up. We played the first basketball game at the Civic Center, and we're still here, Dwayne Brewer said, one of the planners for that Lakota Invitational. Okay, hundreds of people packed a public hearing on a bill designed to jumpstart an iron mine in far northwestern Wisconsin, even though the hearing was held 330 miles from the site of where the mine will impact local residents and the Bad River Ojibwe tribe. Aides said over 130 people had already registered to speak before noon. The Assembly Jobs Committee is considering a Republican bill that will streamline the state's rigorous permitting process for Gojibek taconite, which wants to mine iron in the Pinocchio Hills just south of Lake Superior. Mine supporters say the project will create jobs, an effort being supported and pushed by Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Opponents worry the mine would pollute one of the most pristine regions in the state. Members of the Bad River Ojibwe tribe nevertheless held a vigil gathering on the Bad River Reservation, while other members of the reservation, northern Wisconsin tribes, and citizens traveled south in an attempt to add testimony to the assembly hearing hosted by Republican chairperson Mary Williams, who supports the mine and who seemed to indicate it was more important to hear from those people in the Wisconsin manufacturing district of southern Wisconsin who would benefit from the profits of the mine than those it might impact negatively. The new mining law requires state officials to approve or deny a mine application within a year, eliminate administrative challenges to permitting decisions, lower environmental standards, and limit lawsuits over permit violations. And just in case anybody out there is watching the Wisconsin recall of the governor effort, at noon on December 15th, the Democratic Party of Wisconsin will broadcast a special update live on the campaign to recall Scott Walker. That'll be at wisdems.org/live. We'll put that URL up there so that you can find it. A coalition of environmental and community groups opposed to a nickel and copper mine under construction in Michigan's Upper Peninsula asked the State Court of Appeals on December 12th to overturn a judge's approval of the project. 4 groups contend the Department of Environmental Quality should not have granted the Kennecott Eagle Minerals Company a permit to build and operate the mine because it poses a high risk of water and air pollution. They say the mine's rock ceiling would be unstable and could cave in, endangering workers in the Salmon Trout River under which the tunnel would be drilled. Opponents also say metallic dust, vehicle exhaust, and other contaminants would foul the air, although the DEQ has approved an air emissions permit for the mine. Kennecott has insisted repeatedly the project is well designed and would protect workers and the environment. The DEQ approved the permit back in the year 2007, a decision upheld by an administrative law judge. Opponents appealed to Circuit Judge Paula Manderfield, who sided with the DEQ last month as well. Leaders of Montana's Little Shell tribe of Chippewa in Montana said they expect new elections will be held next year to end a dispute over a 2009 vote that split the landless tribe into opposing factions. Notably absent from the ballot could be Chairman John Sinclair. Sinclair said December 12th he likely will not run again after the turmoil that surrounded his last election. A three-judge panel of tribal law experts met December 10th in Great Falls to hear arguments over the legitimacy of the 2009 re-election of Sinclair to the Little Shell's 7-member council. The judges included Ernest St. Germain, a reserve judge in Wisconsin, of the Wisconsin Tribal Judges Association, Abby Abenanti, Chief Judge for the Yurok Tribe of California, and B.J. Jones, Director of the Tribal Judicial Institute at the University of North Dakota, and a judge with the Turtle Mountain Chippewa Tribe. A dissenting group, the Little Shell Alliance, rejected that election as illegitimate and last year held its own election, naming John Gilbert of Great Falls as their tribal chairman. A Warm Springs, Oregon man who fired at police during a high-speed chase was sentenced this week in federal court in Portland to more than 12 years in prison. The U.S. Attorney's Office said 23-year-old Waylon McKee Weasel had pled guilty to assault with intent to commit murder. During the chase in May of 2010, prosecutors say Weasel had leaned out of the passenger window with a rifle and fired at two pursuing Warm Springs police cars. Both cars were hit, but no officers were injured. Authorities said Weaselhead and the driver of the car were members of a gang called the Native Gangsta Tribe. Montana State University says one of its graduates has been named the head of the new White House Initiative on American Indian and Alaska Native Education. The university says William Mendoza will lead the initiative created by an executive order signed by President Barack Obama this month. It is aimed at expanding educational opportunities for American Indians and Alaska Natives. Mendoza had been the acting director of the White House initiatives on tribal colleges and universities. He is an enrolled Oglala Sioux tribal member who grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation and Rosebud Indian Reservations in South Dakota. Mendoza received a master's degree in educational leadership from MSU last year. The U.S. Supreme Court could review a lawsuit by a group of Hawaii residents who want the same property tax exemptions as Native Hawaiian homesteaders. The Honolulu Star-Advertiser reports that Supreme Court this week invited the U.S. Solicitor General to file a brief in the case. The one-sentence order says the Solicitor General is invited to file a brief expressing the views of the United States. In April, the Hawaiian Supreme Court ruled that the 5 non-Native Hawaiians did not have legal standing to challenge the constitutionality of the tax exemption. Congress passed the Hawaiian Homes Act in 1921, setting aside the reserved land for Native Hawaiians that belonged to the Hawaiian Kingdom for $1 per year. That exemption was later extended with taxes ranging from $25 to $150 a year per homestead. 3 affiliated tribes chairman Tex Hall has been appointed by Interior Secretary Ken Salazar to the National Commission dealing with trust funds. The Minot Daily News reports that Hall is one of 5 people nationwide named to the Secretarial Commission on Indian Trust Administration and Reform. The group will evaluate Interior's management of nearly $4 billion in American Indian trust funds. Hall is a past president of the National Congress of American Indians. He currently serves as chairman of the Intertribal Economic Alliance and the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association. And that is going to be another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to say miigwech for joining with us and come back again soon.